What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on a single video. There's going to be lots more teen mom news, as you can already see, and I really don't want you to miss out on anything. Okay, so in today's recap of the 25th episode of the 6th season of Teen Mom OG, we get a lot of filler scenes at the very beginning of it that I'm going to skip right through. So let's just jump into the meat of the episode, which really kicks off with Farrah in LA when Simon calls her and she tells him that she wants to bring him to an appointment with her hypnotherapist, where she says she wants to hypnotize Simon into no longer desiring her. And that kind of sets him off because he immediately shoots back by saying that he wants her to go under hypnotherapy to stop lying all the time, and they kind of bicker about it before we move on. As soon as Farrah gets off the phone, she rounds up Sophia because she's about to take her to an acting class, and Sophia was feeling super lazy and she refused to move. So Farrah commissioned a hotel bellhop with one of those bellhop carts, and they put Sophia in it and just dragged her on out all the way over to the car. And even though the guy's face was blurred, you could just tell he was like, this crazy ass broad, they do not pay me enough for this gig. Now it's time for little Sophia to shine as we see her in acting class talking to her instructor. He gives her like the sheet to read. I guess it's a scene or a commercial or something, and so she reads her lines. And you know, I do have to say she's actually a great reader. I didn't know whether or not she would be, because speaking wise in conversations with people, she seems a little bit like not as far as her peers might be, but I think that's just because she thinks that, you know, Farrah and Deborah and them expect her to speak in baby voice, so she just entertains them that way. It's nice to see that she really does have like structure behind her. All right, back in Amber's dirty ass home, we come to find out via our sweet little Leah that one of their millions of cats has made its way onto the roof and refuses to come down. And Amber goes, oh my god, the neighbors are gonna think we're the Beverly Hillbillies who just moved in here. And the shady ass producers take that opportune moment to cut on over to two of their dogs doing the dirty on a dirty ass floor. I think it was Matt who went out to take a look at the cat, and the cat just didn't want to come down, so they left it alone all the way up there. And then he comes back in to talk to her about wedding planning. So they're going through their list of guests, and apparently they had originally planned to have about 100 guests, but it turns out that they're going overboard, and it looks like, you know, about 130 people are going to be there. Was I the only one surprised that they were gonna have such a big wedding? Because ever since Amber has been with this guy, and even before, honestly, we've never really seen her with that many people. And speaking of the wedding, we get to cut on over to Gary and Christina at home, where Christina tells Gary that Matt had invited them to the wedding, and Gary is like kind of really unenthused about the whole thing, and you can tell Christina sort of is as well. But then again, she's pretty like blank and emotionless and like uncharismatic, so I'm just guessing that she's unenthused by this whole thing. And so Gary goes into this little bit of a preachy mode where he's like, all right, marriage is a big commitment, you have to find the right person for it, and if you're happy, don't do it, almost as if he's warning Amber against the whole thing. And you guys, sidebar here, but what happened to Gary? He seemed to have aged overnight. He looked a good 47 and a half in this scene. It seems like the Teen Mom producers are not that here for Catelynn and Tyler this episode, because we zoom on by them, you know, registering Nova for daycare, and then we see Maci and Taylor going golfing for his birthday, and of course they have those obnoxious TTM shirts and just whatever. Anyway, back to Farrah. She really did get a lot of airtime this episode, so she and Sophia head on over to her LA townhouse, where she says that she's going to break the news to her tenants that she, you know, kind of wants to move in there. So I guess she was going to tell them that she's not renewing their lease, but once she gets there, she starts talking to them, and they tell her that they really want to extend their lease actually, and then subsequently ask her whether or not the extension will give them permission to sort of paint the home and make it a little bit more theirs. I thought that was a really odd request personally, especially considering they only wanted to extend their lease by 1 more month. Like, you lived all this time without that certain paint color that you're after. You really think 30 more days is gonna hurt? Like, what you talking about, Willis? But anyway, Sophia at a certain point kind of just blurts out to Farrah, when are we moving in here? And Farrah really did a good job of playing it down. She shoes, like, oh, silly Sophia. She's always asking me when we're moving to LA, ignore this chick. And she kind of just leaves the townhouse without even breaking the news to the girls. And it's like, what happened to the old Farrah that we used to know and love? Like, the old Farrah would have been like, yeah, Sophia, that's a good question. Let's ask these bitches. So when the heck are you leaving? You know? And so she kind of seems to have agreed to the lease extension and just left. And then when she and Sophia got back in the car, she scolded Sophia for even bringing that up in front of the girls. Amber is really bringing the wedding scene this episode, because now we turn on over to her in Indiana, where she takes her cousin Crystal, her mother Leah, and her grandmother, who seems to be about the same age as Matt, and of course Matt as well, to go looking at wedding venues. Amber's grandma asks Matt whether or not his mother's going to be attending the wedding, and then Matt tries to play like the whole world's smallest violin for himself. He's like, well, I would love for her to, but I don't even know if I'm going to invite her, because if she didn't come, it would just be heartbreaking. And I feel like I've read this. You know, sometimes you have this knowledge that's kind of intuitive. You don't know where you got it from, but you know you heard it somewhere. But I have this like inkling of knowledge that Matt's mom probably disowned him because she knew that he was like a seedy, greasy grifter, just running around the country abusing women and leaving a trail of babies in his wake. You know, but of course he's gonna play the victim. He's probably gonna act like she is some kind of drug addict or some kind of abusive person. So let's just drop this like it's hot before I really get mad and drop into a tangent on the reasons I cannot stand Matthew Baier. Taylor and Maci wrap up their little golfing trip and head on home where his surprise party awaits. So when they arrive there, he's like, oh, look at all these cars in the driveway, and kind of, you know, catches up to what's going on. And she's like, surprise. And you see all of their friends there. And the two of them just head on in to enjoy Taylor's surprise party, proudly sponsored by Bud Light and Doritos. Over at Catelynn and Tyler's makeshift farm, the two of them discuss Nova's upcoming first day of daycare, and Catelynn lets us know that the reason she's not going to be able to make it there is because she's going to be in New York shooting her promotions for the show. But she does get to help Tyler prepare things for Nova's first day. We saw her writing Nova's name on her things. And side note, before we leave here, I just want to say I really love Catelynn and Tyler's like kitchen decor. Not the whole thing, but like I'm loving their backsplash and the open shelving that they have. It's very Joanna Gaines. Back in LA, Simon books his very own room in a hotel that's Farrah is staying at with Sophia, and he FaceTimes her from bed, and he just seems really lazy. She asks him to come see Sophia, and he's like, oh, like really sluggish about it. And Farrah got, rightfully so, pissed off about it. I feel like, listen, Simon, you have been in this girl's life, Sophia's life, for, you know, like 2 years and a bit, right? And like considering the fact she's like, what, 8? That's a really significant amount of time for her. And also considering the fact that she doesn't have a father, you probably mean a lot to her. So for Farrah to FaceTime you in front of her daughter and ask you to come see her daughter, telling you that, you know, Sophia wants you to see her, your reaction was really inappropriate, in my personal opinion. Like acting like you kind of didn't want to see her. Like I know you were tired and stuff like that, but like a child does not really register that. So I could totally understand why Farrah was pissed off about the whole thing. On the hunt for some drama, Kristen, our bootleg Heather replacement, heads on over to Simon's room to convince him to come to Farrah's to, you know, say hi to Sophia, because Sophia really does miss him and want to say hello. And then when he gets there, Farrah again badgers him for being really lazy over FaceTime when she first asked him to come over, and reminds him that the two of them have a hypnotherapy session coming up. Meanwhile, in Michigan, Tyler takes Nova to daycare for her very first day, and she seems to fit in quite well, and she is so cute, it hurts you guys. So when he drops her off, he heads back to his car to call Catelynn and rehash the whole thing to her. And one thing that was really odd about the way he described the drop-off was that he said it was really difficult to relinquish control. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean relinquish control? I felt like that was really clumsy wording on his end. Obviously, I don't think he meant anything malicious by it, but it was just really ugly wording. Let's be honest here. And speaking of cringe, Amber and Matt are in her bedroom when he climbs all up on her bed wearing his shoes. Like, ugh, I wanted to gag so bad. You know how dirty that is? And then they've got 2 dogs playing on the bed. Like, yeah, I get that people sleep with their dogs. I don't think there's anything really that wrong with that. Like if you keep your dog clean, but knowing Amber and Matt and the state of filth that they live in, the combination of his shoes on the bed, and their two probably dirty ass, stinky ass dogs on the bed too, just makes my stomach crawl. And so in this scene, Amber just has this weird thing about her pill. She's like, oh, I'm crazy. These are all my pills that I need to function. Otherwise I don't bathe. You know, it was just a really uncomfortable scene. And then the two of them talk about the upcoming wedding, where Amber innocently says, you know what, since we're working towards marriage, why don't we go see a counselor as well? You know, just to make sure we're really healthy as we head in. And Matt's like, counselor, what do you mean? We're planning a wedding. Well, yeah, that's exactly why you should see a counselor. I personally think premarital counseling is a really good idea that a lot of people should probably engage in. And so he totally dismisses the idea, and that really kind of pisses off Amber and makes her sad at the very same time. You guys, this episode was Farrah overload, okay? So now we see her and Simon at the hypnotherapist's office, where she says that she's there because she is done with her relationship with Simon. I mean, since when has that ever been a reason to get hypnotherapy? But I digress. And Simon kind of was really pissed off about the way she worded it. And so he's like, well, I'm here because I want a woman who knows how to be a real woman. And I was like, okay, well, you should, you know, mosey your ass on over to Amber, because she is the only real woman in this world. But he also does soften things up a little bit by saying that he really is still emotionally invested in his relationship with Farrah, and that he's confused by her as well. The session starts and Simon seems to get really into it, but by the end of it, they just say, you know, this was a great session. And so Simon's like, well, I guess this is the end. And he rips off his mic pack and kind of just walks away. Shit really hits the fan this episode when we find out that Matt had actually secretly offered Catelynn what was it, a Xanax or something, when she said that she was having an anxiety attack on the plane. So apparently Catelynn had saved the Xanax instead of consuming it in order to run back and tell Amber all about it and use it as proof as to what happened. And so Amber was absolutely livid with Matt, because he was never supposed to have any kind of narcotic on him, because as far as the story goes that he's pitching to her these days, he is a recovering addict, right? And so she's like, if you're clean and sober, why the heck do you have a Xanax? The whole crew is at what I'm assuming to be a hotel when Matt pulls Amber aside because she was visibly upset, and he's like, oh my God, Amber, like, what's wrong? You mad at me? And I'm gonna try my best to like recreate this. Amber, what's wrong? You mad at me? You're mad at Daddy? You're mad at you? You mad at Daddy? You're mad at Daddy? Like him. I'm not even gonna say the word, but him using the D word to describe himself, especially as we all know that Amber literally is his daughter's age, is just vomit my guts, my intestines, my heart, my soul, everything out, like disgusting. And so Amber's like, yeah, I'm mad at you. And so Matt, of course, like runs to the very thing that like he has been working his whole life to attain, which is a solid teen mom, you know, locked in the bank kind of deal, right? He's like, so like, does this mean you're not gonna marry me? Will you still marry me? And Amber's like, I don't like, no. And he's like, well, think about like how stupid you'll look. What do you mean? You've got the interviews today. What are you gonna say? And so Amber's like, well, I'll lie. And he's like, wow. And Amber's like, by the way, I'm mic'd up. And he's like, oh, what do you mean you're mic'd? She's like, come on, we're on a show. Like, we're always mic'd up. Or like, are you? No? Well, frig, your own ignorance. We're on a show. It was so classic abuser Matt to be like, oh, what do you mean you won't marry me? You look stupid in interviews and stuff like that. Just ick, all around ick. He never ceases to amaze me. So the whole group is getting ready together for their interviews and stuff in like what seems to be a conference room, where Matt sees Catelynn minding her own business on the windowsill, and he heads on over to kind of apologize and be like, listen, I didn't mean to cause any kind of trouble or whatever. Like, I had the pills because they were my friend's pills. Yeah, right. And you know, they're not mine, but Amber thinks I'm a full-blown addict and she wants nothing to do with me at this point. And Kate's like, well, I didn't want to start any trouble either. And you know, I don't know, there's something shady about that Kate girl. It was just odd the way she was like, I saved it for proof. I don't understand that. And Kate heads over to Amber, and the two of them talk about how Matt is consistently fucking up, and Catelynn is also like, well, listen, like, I always have your back over anybody. You know what, there are also two other things that I don't really get. Number one, why would Matt be seated next to Catelynn and not Amber on a plane? Because listen, if Matt were seated next to Catelynn, knowing Amber would have been like, hey, let's just switch, right? Like, if you're friends with someone and they're a couple and they get split up, you're just like, well, take my seat, it's not gonna bug me. So I don't know why that didn't happen. And number two, why is Matt the only guy there? Like, Tyler is tending to his daughter. What's his face? Taylor's with his children as well. So like, what purpose does Matt serve here? Like, I really didn't get that at all. So the episode actually just ends with all of the girls being together. So first of all, before all the girls get back together, Amber does an interview with a reporter, and she is doing what she said she would do, which is lying about the state of her miserable relationship with Matt, as the camera is also showing Matt like having a full-blown meltdown about what she might be saying without him being there. So like in the first scene, someone's like, so what, you know, will you guys be getting married? Amber's like, yes, we're gonna get married, blah, 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 blah. And then we cut back to Matt, and he's like, oh my God, she thinks I'm a junkie. I didn't even realize what the hell she's talking about. Oh my God, I can't believe she did this to me. And then we cut back to Amber and a reporter. Reporter's like, well, are you gonna set the record straight about all this stuff coming out about Matt? What do you want to say to your haters? She's like, our relationship is gonna play out the way it's playing out right now. What's good? If we break up, we break up. Whatever, you know, like they have no influence on us. And then we cut back to Matt, and he's like, well, oh my God, like I can't even deal with this. I am so freaking done with her. Give me 5 minutes with the reporter and I will show you exactly what she's like. Oh my God, like this guy has no loyalty to anyone but himself and his pocket, and it is absolutely disgusting. Like Vegas was bad enough, but like knowing that Amber has seen this too is just mind-blowing that she's still with him. But it's also not really mind-blowing because, like I keep saying, it's an abusive relationship, and it's not that easy for her, especially because she has herself so deeply intertwined with this man. Like he's on her deeds, he is on her bank accounts. She can't just up and leave him, right? Like she really stuck her foot in it this time. And then when Amber comes out of her interview room, she goes back to sit with everybody, and Matt's like, oh my God, you look so beautiful, hun. How did the interview go? And he is just so seedy and disgusting. He makes my skin crawl. I don't know how Amber does it. And of course, we can't have a Teen Mom OG episode without Maci whining about Ran. Usually she has, you know, Taylor or one of her friends lobbying up the T-ball for her to bat it out of what do you call that? The bases, I don't know, when it comes to talking shit about Ryan. But this time, the only person available was Nosy Kate. So Nosy Kate was like, Maci, how's Ryan doing? Like, is he, you know, getting better? And Maci's like, well, Ryan is Ryan, but you know what? I do have to say, like, he has his ups and down months, and this is one of those up months where I'm kind of thinking, like, is he done? Like, is he past his addiction or something like that? But you know what? I am tired. I cannot talk about this anymore. And then she pivots the conversation into the therapy that she and Taylor had been going to and how it's helped them to communicate with each other a little bit better. And then all of the girls start talking about therapy, and Amber's like, you know what? I don't even know if I want to go to therapy anymore. I did mention it to Matt once and he shut it down. And like after the thing with Kate and the Xanax, like I don't even know if any of this is worth it anymore. Like the girl looks so broken and dead behind the eyes and just sad and devastated and alone. And it was so sad to watch her. Like even when she was laughing, talking about Nova and everything else, you could just see she is depressed and devastated as hell. And then one of the girls, you know what? I am betting it's Nosy Kate. Let me look at my little notes real quick. Yup, it's Nosy Kate. Nosy Kate asked her, you know, like whether or not they're still gonna get married and stuff like that. And Amber's like, well, you know what? At this point, Matt would be lucky if I married his ass. And Kate's like, well, what about the venue? I sent you a venue. Did you book it? And Amber at that point is like, yeah, we booked it. And you can just tell she feels like she has to go through with this. Just, you know, like all the money that's been down the drain, all the hurt she's already been through. She keeps thinking, listen, I've gone through this much hurt. This has to be the end of it. Like no one can put someone through more hurt than this, right? Like I've already gone through it, right? And like, sadly for Amber, it's gonna keep continuing until the very end, until she finally jumps out of this. It was a really sad note to end the episode on, but that's all she wrote for that episode of Teen Mom OG. What did you all think of everything that went down this episode? From Farrah's hypnotherapy session to Matt offering Kate a Xanax that he just so happened to have lying around in his pocket that's not his. Kate snitching on him. What else happened? Maci's golfing and surprise party with Taylor. Leave all of your opinions and thoughts and commentary in the comment section down below. And as usual, we will chat. You can also like this video, subscribe for more, feel free to share it with your friends as well, and follow me across social media where I love chatting with you. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.